All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horror heads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And we are back at it now. We missed Dave last week. We had Hunger on for the autopsy of Jane Doe, but Dave's back, and we are continuing with our, movies that are new to us, new stuff that's finally on streaming that we've been waiting for. And this is one that a lot of people have been messaging us or asking us about, when are you going to do Smile 2? You guys did Smile and you had these big feelings about it. When are you going to do Smile 2? Well, it's on Amazon Prime now. And here we are up this week with Smile 2. So in a section that we're called Right Back at It Again, Dave, give us your initial thoughts on Smile 2.
I think that this is everything that we loved about Smile 1 again. And that sounds like it would be a bad thing, except that it works. At least for me, it works. I loved seeing all of those themes of grief and trauma re-explored in a new way. And I hate to be that guy, but I'm just a huge fan of Naomi Scott.
Fair.
I can watch her read a phone book and love it. There's something about her face. She's so expressive. She's so amazing. She really carries this movie. And there's a great cast here as well. But she really carries this film in a way that, for me, just makes sense.
Yeah, this movie, there's a lot to digest here that is, like you said, simultaneously Smile 1 again in a good way. And there's a handful of things in this movie that I feel like, turned the corner in a bad way. Not that I was a bad movie. I did enjoy this. It was definitely scary as shit. And that's always one of the initial things I try to ask myself is, was this movie scary? If it's supposed to be scary, right? And this movie is terrifying. This movie is very, very scary. So it's huge check plus in that box. One thing I kept feeling like throughout the course of this movie is I feel like in an attempt to more deeply kind of explore these ideas of trauma and grief and PTSD, that it kind of lost some of the plot that made Smile 1 good. Now, we're going to say at the end of this episode, we don't compare it to other movies, and we don't, but it's a sequel, so we're going to have to reference it. And I feel like somewhere in all of what was happening here, some of the ideas of how broad the spray of your grief can be in covering other people was lost in this. A friend of the show, Michael Hunger, and I were having a conversation about this, and this movie almost feels like one of those things like they did with Saw 2, where they were like, we need to do a sequel, but we don't have a complete idea. So they go to like that script graveyard, that script blacklist, and they kind of dig something up, and then they remold it to fit their universe. There were times when I really got that feeling from this movie that there was an idea for this movie of a musician dealing with the grief and the trauma of this major accident that they'd had and losing a friend or partner. And then they said, oh, we can make this work with Smile because we've created this paranormal entity that feeds off of these things. And there was a lot of the movie where it really, really worked. There was, if that is what happened. If that's not, who am I to say? But there was a lot of this movie that really, really, really worked. And then there was just one major moment that we'll get to in story that some people may have really enjoyed. I kind of felt like was a fuck you. And that bothered me. Not enough that I didn't enjoy the movie. Like I said, there's just there's some of this stuff that I didn't enjoy as much as I was really hoping to.
I think a lot of this has to do because you're 100% right. It's almost like, and I've spoken about this before. I like to reference this to Superman. You can either accept that he can fly, that he's got laser eye vision, that he's got freezing breath, that he's got all of these superpowers, but he can't see through lead. You can either accept that or you can't. And if you can't accept that Superman has this, like, well, and I hate to say, like, nerd out about it, right? We're like, well, actually, Superman, if the kryptonite is within his, there's that. There is. But if you accept that all of these conditions of Superman work, then Superman is fantastic. If you don't, and this is a 100% personal thing, if you don't accept that, Superman doesn't work at all. And there's nothing about it that works. All of my friends that have told me, well, I love the new Superman movie, but, actually with, Crypto the dog and blah, blah, blah. And I hate to use that voice, but that's what the fuck you sound like to me.
Fucking nerds.
You're fucking nerds, and I'm a nerd, so fuck you, right? You are refusing to accept a basic premise. And that's fine. You don't have to accept that premise. You can accept it, you can not accept it. But I think with Smile, you have some of that here, where you can either accept this premise of trauma is debilitating, or you cannot accept that. And I do think that says something about you as a person, but also as a person who wants to be entertained. That says something about you too, because there is an aspect of slasher here also, which I think is important, because in a lot of ways, this is the modern Friday the 13th.
Okay.
And I think that's something of a bold statement, but I also think that's not that hard to take.
I can see where you're going with that. Like I get it, and like I said, there is my bugaboos, if you will, with this movie aren't enough to color the entire movie for me. I will say that it's and I can see where you needed something to set it apart. I feel like there was, in Smile one of the things, there was a lot of stuff that was just kind of ambiguous, and you were allowed to fill in those blanks. And I enjoyed us getting to talk about it and try to fill in those blanks, kind of try to decide what we think some of these plot lines might have resolved as. And as I was reading, just to kind of figure out, if there was any indication that this script happened the way that I thought it might, it did say that was done intentionally to set up sequels. And, that's fine. I get it. Everything has to be a universe, right? Everything's got to, you're trying to build a franchise here.
It's unfortunate, but that's the reality that we live in.
Right. We're not all Robert Eggers who are just like, here's a fucking movie and it rules. Now I'm moving on to something else. Ha!
It's not that we're not all Robert Eggers. No one is Robert Eggers. Even Robert Eggers isn't Robert Eggers.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I ultimately, I enjoyed this. It was scary. When we get into the story, I'll talk about the good and the couple of bad things that I had.
Well, let's get right into that then. So in a section that we're calling trauma, it's what's for dinner. I think that, and again, this is just what I think, and you can decide, fuck that guy. He's got no idea what he's talking about. But I will say, I've got a number of graduate school degrees in literature, and I can kind of read into what's going on in things. And I don't care how douchey that sounds. There is a theme that is repeated between the first and the second movie in this series. Trauma is something that bogs people down. It bogs me down. It's the reason why I've got a therapist. It's the reason why we all think about, even if we don't have a therapist, we think about therapy. There's something to this, I think. And the fact that in the first movie, they chose a very real, very everyday person as the protagonist. And in this movie, they chose a drastically different kind of protagonist here. I think that very much like, and I mentioned Friday the 13th, we can throw out A Nightmare on Elm Street. We can throw out Halloween. We can throw out Final Destination, Scream. There's so many different franchises that they knew right from the beginning. This is what we are. This is what we explore. There's a theme here of trauma and what happens when you don't deal with it that is universal, where you can look at someone like the protagonist of that first movie, the protagonist of the second movie, and the protagonist of, and I'm calling it now, that third movie that hasn't happened yet, and say, I associate with that. I see myself in it. How does that story of dealing, or more importantly, not dealing with trauma work for you?
So you started off with exactly kind of what I wanted to start off with, which I think it is a genius move to make the protagonist of this, Sky Riley, Sky Riley. This famous pop superstar, because we're coming off of Rose in the first one, and she's just a chick, so now and you're going, oh, okay, well, yeah, like normal people have normal problems, and this. So now you're looking at this pop megastar. I mean, they're talking about $1 million productions for her to go on a world tour. You're seeing.
I saw her as Lady Gaga. I don't know if that's what you saw, but for me, it was like she's Lady Gaga. Like, she is the biggest pop star in the world.
Yeah, I was thinking more like a Selena Gomez type thing, but yeah, I can see Lady Gaga.
That probably is more relevant, but because I am who I am,
right? Yeah,
I guess I'm seeing Gaga.
Yeah, let's say right now, probably like Sabrina Carpenter would be the equivalent.
I fucking love her. I don't care how problematic her album cover is. She's brilliant. She's absolutely fantastic. And Miss Carpenter, if you ever listen to the show, we want to have you on.
Absolutely. She is either a genius, or the combination of her and her PR people are genius, but the way that they do stuff is incredible. And I've heard she does like 90-minute to 2-hour shows basically without a break. So bravo. But anyway, so we see that we enter this movie as she's on her Phoenix from the Ashes tour, right? This is her resurgence into the world after the tragedy of drugs and alcohol ending the life of her friend or partner, and her going through just absolute hell in an attempt to come back, bigger, better, faster, stronger type thing. And
Daft Punk, we love you as well.
And so we're immediately kind of thrust into this. We're given this idea of, okay, she's, essentially like Cali sober, right? She's not drinking, she's not doing drugs, she's still on Vikes because her back hurts. And so and then we're immediately thrust into it. This is after we get this quick little recap of like, oh yeah, remember somebody's got to watch the person die, and then it moves to them. Like, we get this really quick thing at the beginning. And we're thrust into this, and then we're immediately back in the Smile universe. And nothing is ever as it seems. There's all these creepy people around. We're watching Skye slowly lose her mind. All of that, great. Some fantastic extended gag sequences here that led to some very good scares. And as it progresses, we get more detail on what this demon, this spirit, this paranormal entity that is in her is. We get the whole virus explanation and some things like that again. Loving all of this. It's all going very, very well with some very scary moments. That fucking scene where she's in bed with Gemma, and she rolls over and she hears Gemma's voice, but Gemma's still asleep. And then it's her eyes and mouth light up like the car headlights, and there's that blaring horn that comes out of nowhere because you're kind of leaned towards the TV because they're whispering and you're trying to figure out exactly what's going on.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Literal piss in my drawers. Like, it scared me so. Like, I was and it's because I was expecting a jump scare, but I was expecting a open eyes, open mouth scream, not the deadlights. Like it.
Absolutely.
It completely caught me off guard. So some great stuff in there. I love that we get the juxtaposition of real life horrors that a pop star faces, like the super creepy guy who kind of looked like that DJ Stephen Noy, I think is his name, right? Like, he looked like a really gross version of him. And he says something about, like, I could make you so happy and your skin is so beautiful. And it's like, oh, that's like a real thing that, like a Sabrina Carpenter probably has to deal with. And that's horrifying. And then you're also dealing with and then immediately you're confronted with the little girl who's got the smile, and you're reminded, like, okay, yeah, also there's like super creepy supernatural things. I love the way they did some of those things back to back. I really did like a lot.
Is it weird
so much
that
of the build-up.
I associated with that little girl's father?
Really?
Yeah, like, as the father of a child who is autistic, I looked at that guy who was in the background. Like, he didn't even register in that scene, but he was included there. I thought that was like really important. And she's looking at this because I come from the world of like critical theory and literary theory. Like, I'm looking at like, okay, she's gone through all this trauma. She's looking at this little girl who is clearly on the spectrum. That's not what she's presented as, but she is,
Right.
this girl is just sitting there smiling at her. Her dad's in the background. Her dad's like, what a beautiful moment for my little girl. That's who I saw myself as. Also, I see myself as Boromir in The Lord of the Rings. So don't take what I say with like anything but a grain of salt. But I was like, what a powerful moment for that guy. Where he's like, my little girl is living her best dream. But for Sky Riley, it's like, this is really creepy. This is really scary. What do I do in this situation? How do I act? How do I react? What do I do here? Like, you're a teacher of special needs children. At my school, everyone is streaming. How do you react to this? To me, that was such a validating moment for the people in the ASD community, for parents who are coping with children that are on the spectrum. It was, I think, handled with so much respect for all parties.
Okay. I didn't see it that way at all, but I'm here for it. Like, I get what you're saying, especially if we take this idea of, so when Sky's looking at her and she sees the smile.
Right.
And so you take that and you relate it to when she's at the dinner and she sees Paul, but only she sees Paul. So no one else is reacting to the fact that Paul is walking up on the stage because he's only there for her. Other people are reacting to this moment that she's having with this little girl. So there is a line to be drawn there that says, okay, so this little girl, the demon, if you will, is just causing her to see a smile on this little girl and using the fact that this little girl's interaction is going to be socially awkward anyway because of what's going on, to then create a situation that makes it even more uncomfortable for Sky. Because while Paul was not there, that little girl was. Her dad's reacting. Joshua, I believe her name was, her personal assistant. He's like, oh, yeah, that's a good one. That picture was definitely taken, right? So we know that happened. So, okay, I can kind of see that. I can kind of dig on that. I like that.
Yeah, and I know that that's not a conventional take. Or I say I know, but I don't think that's a conventional take. But
right.
For me, as the father of a child who's on the spectrum, a child who is neurodivergent, that is something that for me was, number one, validating, which I think is important for people to see themselves represented in media.
Okay.
And these days more than ever.
Yeah. Very, very, very true. I mean, with entire shows, the show Atypical on Netflix did an amazing job.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
So they did a lot of things. They did a lot of those things very, very well. I mean, just this watching the shattering of Sky's psyche throughout the entirety of this movie was brilliant. Loved it. I loved what we say. How many times on this podcast have we said we love watching a slow descent into madness, right? It gets us. We love that. We're always here for that ride. So all of that being said, in the end, to find out that like none of it happened, that bothered me. It's, you know, like when we did Autopsy of Jane Doe last week, there was this debate about whether or not what happened and what didn't. And when we did Cobweb, You know, we're talking, did this happen? Did that happen? Like it was debate. The way that this went at the very end, this was really the biggest sticking point for me in this movie was it was like, so wait, so now she's back in that outfit that was way before that was the first outfit, right? That's the first thing we saw. And so it's like, and then you see her mom still alive. You see, you know, Joshua and Darius are still rooting for her. And then suddenly you're back at this point where it's like, so you're telling me that like nothing past 17, 18 minutes into this movie, into the sky part of this movie actually occurred, right? Like basically from the day after she catches the virus and is at rehearsal, everything that we've seen throughout the course of this movie was this parasite feeding off of her. And as I was still kind of reeling from that, and I was trying to be like, okay, I get it, right? We needed something. We needed something to make it different, and I can be okay with that. The one thing that I'm not okay with, and this is going to sound crazy coming from me because there was another movie we did where this was your take. I'm just not okay with the way that they decided to physically present us with what the damn thing looked like. And that's I get it. Like that is like the most pedantic, like bullshitty thing. But if you're going to sell me for an entire movie on the fact that yes, there is this parasitic demon and that grief and trauma are the monster, don't try to give me some physical manifestation of it, right? Don't try to give me something that's and just don't try at all. But if you do, for the love of God, make it look better than this wonky ass thing that we got. And that is coupled with the fact that in the scene that it's messing with her, we get this great CGI of it like ripping open her face. And there was some really good stuff that led to that moment. I just really did not look what the monster finally looked like when we got it.
I think that this all goes back to what we said about the original Smile. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that with the original Smile, I said I was here for it, and you said you weren't sure.
Right.
And I think that is where we are today.
Yeah.
So we are nothing if not consistent, number one. Number two, I think that I go back to my statement of Superman. You can either accept something as reality in this fictional world or you can't. And there's no right or wrong answer here. Because if someone were to tell me, bro, Superman is just a step too far, I would say, no, I get it. And I think that Superman is the perfect analogy because it is outlandish, right?
Right.
I mean, ultimately, it's the story of Moses. You're either a believer or you're not. But I think that we have a hard time accepting things as biblical when they're not presented as biblical. And that's what we have here is we have a story that is you accept this, you don't. There's a concept of faith here where it's like trauma is this or it isn't, and it speaks to you or it doesn't speak to you. But I think for me, this is a story that resonated. And I think that for the Smile series that is to come, because I know that there's a Smile 3, and there's a Smile 4, and there's a Smile 5, and all of that. You either accept this or you don't.
Right. Well, and we've got Michael Hunger chiming in here. He says, especially when the CGI is the quality of Dwayne Johnson in The Mummy Returns.
Well, Hunger, I'm going to disagree with you here. All right. I don't think that it is on that level. We have looked at movies that I think are that bad. And I don't think this is it.
And I think that part of what got me, like, especially because the reveal that she had never actually made up with Emma and all of that was in her head. I was okay. You're using that analogy of like, is it a step too far, right? I was here for, okay, she never actually made up with Gemma, like all of that in her head. Cool. I'm here for, Lewis, or what was that his name? Morris. Morris doesn't really exist, right? Still here for it. I just like the step too far for me. And like I said, and it was just, and it, like I said, does not ruin the entire movie for me. But when it was just like, I was willing to accept that she had just driven herself to this Pizza Hut because the demon set up all of this just to fuck with her. Like, I was here.
By the way, can we talk about the fact that it's a pizza? It could have been a Papa John's, could have been a Domino's. If it had been a Domino's, that might have been a step too far for you.
But you're here for Pizza Hut.
I'm here for the Pizza Hut. I've never liked Pizza Hut. I want to
bring back the buffet.
But I loved a buffet.
And so, like, I was down with all of that. And the fact that she was going to be there and that this demon was just toying with her by creating this entire scenario where she ended up in a Pizza Hut freezer by herself. There was no needle, there was no Morris, but just that hard reset of like, oh man, and it's, I like wearing your skin. It's fun, and you're like, oh man, they went to great lengths to mess with her. Like, I love that. I was here for so much of that.
As someone who has never dealt with substance abuse, but has lived in the world of substance abuse. I played in heavy metal and punk bands and went to the seediest areas of Miami. Lived in the seediest areas of Miami. That is what I, as the outside observer, saw for the people who did struggle with substance abuse. They were not addicted. There was an addiction that took over them.
Right. And so I kept waiting for it to be that, right? For it to be that's what the demon was feeding off of. And the reason that she ended up at this Pizza Hut in the middle of nowhere is because that's where she was going to be able to score. Like, I kept waiting for ultimately her, the illusion to be that she was ever clean. And maybe that's what it is for me, is this idea that maybe I'm upset. Maybe I'm upset that I thought I saw where it was going, and then they okie doked me a little harder than I thought they would, right? Because when she showed up and she walks in there and there's all that spray paint, I was like, this is a motherfucking trap house. I know a trap house when I see a trap house, and that's what this Pizza Hut is. This is a trap house. She's there to score, and the demon is making her believe that she's clean and going crazy when she is absolutely still burdened by this addiction, and it is feeding on her addiction and her grief. I kept waiting for that, for the idea that your disillusionment because of grief and PTSD can be so bad that you can start living the lie that you're presenting to everyone else. It starts to infect your mind to the point that you're so caught up in convincing other people that you're clean that you have now convinced yourself that you're clean. I kept waiting for that moment to be the reason she's there is because she's scoring, and her ultimate downfall was going to be that she realized, oh, I'm not clean. Like, I am now in Staten Island in an abandoned Pizza Hut trying to score, whatever opiate or whatever she may be hooked on. And then that being the moment that the demon got her. That being said, it is, remember the ending of The Ring, right? Where they were like, we just got to put the fucking tape in a Blockbuster. It's like, you've got to pass it on. That's the only way to survive. I love that this was that times, let's call it 13,000, right? Like it was that where it was, I'm going to, until now, I've always made people kill themselves in front of one person. I love that there's an entrepreneurial spirit to be found within the demon here that wants to know, well, what happens if this many people witness the suicide? Like, can I split myself and become an epidemic, not just a one person to one person thing? Is there something bigger and better out there for me? Can I be doing this on a grander scale? Can I create a hive mind of me? I loved that. I have absolutely no issues with the fact that she offed herself in front of that audience, because that really showed a depth of evil beyond what we had gotten for 2 movies out of this parasitic demon, in the fact that it no longer is happy just jumping from one to the next. It needs more. It needs to grow. It needs to build. I thought that was a really cool way to do it at the end. So, like I said, for my couple of things that bothered me about the story, I as I'm saying it, I am really kind of, I wanted addiction to be more of the monster than it was. And part of this is, and this is going to sound awful to say as I'm putting this sentence together in my head, part of this is the monster is trauma fatigue. And that's, we discussed this, I think, when we did the Boogeyman. We discussed the fact that it's becoming so tropey that they even tried to shoehorn it into that and did so pitifully. This does do it well, but at the same time, there are more issues out there that you can approach. And I feel like because of the story that they gave us with Sky Riley here, they could have very well also made this about the fact that, like you said, addicts are people with a sickness. It's not that they are addicts, it's that they have addictions, right? It's all wording. They could have made this about that too. And then it would have been at least a little more fresh in this world where generational trauma and personal trauma are just becoming the go-to monster for movies. I mean, and continuously done well and done poorly. But I mean, once it starts making it to Disney movies as well, I mean, you look at Encanto, you look at Frozen 2, these are movies. Disney is now even being Coco. Disney is now even being like, hey, the real monster is you and your family. And you're like, what? Like, what just happened to
it's
evil
kind of
fairies
the
that
only
turned to
monster Disney
dragons?
does anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Enchanted did it, like all of these movies. And so while it is a very real thing, and it is very much a thing that one of the biggest things is that our generation and going forward are are coping with the fact that this is no longer taboo to talk about, right? Like we don't always shove it down with Brown anymore. Yeah, I still drink whiskey when I'm not feeling great, but whatever. But we are now raising children and living around people where it's okay to kind of openly discuss these things. So I understand the idea of it being in so many movies. I think that if we're going to keep moving forward with this, we need to find these other things that we can start putting to the forefront as monstrous things outside of just the occasional, like, sure, you've got Requiem, you've got Traffic, you've got these movies that do look at that, but we can also start working it into other genres like we've been doing with these trauma movies.
What is your favorite horror franchise?
My favorite horror franchise? I usually say Nightmare on Elm Street, but recently after just kind of they just as things progress, I really do like the Saw franchise a lot, but I mean, I don't know that I've ever put my finger just straight on one particular franchise that's my favorite.
All right, so let's say you said Nightmare on Elm Street first. I would say first that comes to mind is Friday the 13th. Are either of us right?
No,
because it very well could be Saw, like you said. The second that comes to mind for me is Halloween. Is Halloween right? I don't know that it is either. Lincoln has recently been talking about Final Destination, and I know that's because there's a new one, and he's probably seeing it on YouTube. Is Final Destination right? Is Candyman right? Is any horror franchise right? When you say, what's your favorite? And I think that what you and I are saying here, sublimated to whatever you want, is ultimately we heard some shit, we saw some shit, it resonated, it didn't resonate. We felt something.
Okay.
And I think that ultimately that's what makes a great horror franchise. When you feel something, you see something, and you're like, oh, that oh, whether it's a good oh or a bad oh, that is significant. Think about how many bad horror movies you've seen. I've seen a fuck ton. Metric fuck ton. Whether due to this podcast or because I said, hey, Amazon is suggesting this one and it looks real fucking great. Interpret great however you want. I've seen a lot of great and bad horror movies. Not many of them made me think anything at all.
Right.
I happen to like this one. I think you're not sure if you like this one.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I am with it.
But we have thought about this in a way that Velocipaster didn't make me think.
That is so, dude. This is such a crazy like synchronicity moment because as soon as you started talking about like weird ones that Amazon suggested, the first movie that popped in my head was Velocipaster. Like if you would pause for a breath in there, I was going to insert Velocipaster. That is too funny.
Call it Velocipaster, call it anything. There is an X factor about this movie that jives with the original, that makes me think there is something more to come, that to me says this is Jason Voorhees, this is Freddy Krueger, this is Michael Myers, this is Death from Friday the 13th, from Final Destination. Thank you. There is something at play in the Smile movies that is bigger than any of the individual movies that they've come out with yet, that they will come out with. And you can mark this moment in our podcast or whatever. I frankly don't give a fuck. I think there is something here that is way bigger than any director, any producer, any executive producer, any movie studio. How many movie studios have been involved in Friday the 13th? And it's more than two. And two is more than one. All right. So there's a lot here. There is something here that speaks to the human psyche, that speaks to our inner caveman, that says, you identify here, you resonate here, there is something here that speaks to you. And ultimately, trauma, grief, bereavement, call it whatever you want, there is something here that is human, that no AI, no studio is bigger than. And I think that is significant where we are today.
Hey, I see what you're saying, man. I like it. So, you know, we've hammered the story here, right? We've knocked it. We've talked about it. So let's get into talking about the people. So in a section that we're calling of Fly Girls and B-Boys, I mean, what do you think about some of the performances that were given to us here in this movie? Who do you want to talk about first?
Listen, it might be a cop-out, but I need to talk about Naomi Scott.
Fair.
All right. So there's a term that in the horror community we refer to as the fear boner. That was present the whole time. All right. Naomi Scott drove this movie. I got from her not only the role that she was playing, but seeing through that. There was, like, I saw in her Taylor Swift, I saw in her Lady Gaga, I saw in her, think of a pop icon.
Early 2000s Britney Spears.
100% Britney Spears. We've all seen Britney Spears's social media. If that's not fear boner, I don't know what the fuck is. Right? So there is something there that says to me, I love and I hate what I do. I do it for you and I do it for me, and I hate both of those things. And I love both of those things. To me, that's as a creative, as an artist, as a person who has played music for people and for myself, who has done art for myself and for people, that is significant. It's almost scientifically significant. I feel like you can measure that in some. Prince had that aspect to himself where I knew as the fan he suffered for his art.
Yeah.
I feel that about Lady Gaga. She suffers for her art. I saw that in Sky Riley. There was something about her that made me instantly attracted to her. And it wasn't her looks. It was her looks, but it was more than her looks. It was also the genius of her. That for me was like, I find that fucking irresistible, but also the saddest thing ever.
Yeah, the moment first off, there's something about the look of Naomi Scott and I'm talking like the geometry of her face that makes her so perfect for the way that they would do those really intense interview moments where the camera was just right up on her. And just the way that her face is shaped made those scenes so much more powerful. Like I get it. Like when it comes to, why some people just look better on camera, right? All of this up here, it's round and no matter which way you're coming at it, it always all kind of looks the same. When I look at her, I get this idea of girls being like, oh, get my good side. Not that Naomi Scott probably has a bad side, just the fact that like there's angles to her face, and they would shoot these scenes at the beginning when she's doing the Drew Barrymore show or when she's doing the charity dinner, where they're right up on her with some sort of weird lens that kind of distorts what's around her, and her face is just perfect for those. So that's amazing. Now, when it comes to actual performance, there was the scene at the charity dinner where we got two very different people in one moment that was absolutely incredible, because we start off with this really fake, oh, I'm here for a charity dinner, I'm going to read off the teleprompter. And then the way that her entire personality shifted when she had to go off script because the teleprompter stopped working was genius. That I bought that as two different people. And it's that moment where the mask drops, right? And she's not Sky Riley, the pop megastar anymore. She's Sky Riley, the human being. And we get that we get that moment where we're just seeing her as a person with feelings and emotions. You get so tied up in some of these people sometimes, depending on, everybody has some form of hero or celebrity worship, right? We all have these people that are untouchable when it comes, and just they can do no wrong, and when they do, we'll forgive them because they say we should, and we can be okay with that. We get to see that moment where she starts off as that person, where she's going through the motions, she's doing what she has to do because she's Sky Riley, the pop megastar. And then it gets so raw and so real. And the way that Naomi Scott delivered the difference between those two people, then shifted back to person A, pop megastar personality, Sky Riley, when the teleprompter started working again, and then gives us scared human being who is losing her mind, all in this one scene. I was so ridiculously impressed with what she did in that. You know, like she's come a long way, right? Since, you know, just Disney Channel stuff and all of that. I was just so impressed with everything that she gave me in this movie. It was a lot of that, watching her, and not just from an aesthetic point of view, but watching the performance that she gave, because you can essentially subtract everyone else from this movie. You could take away the names and damn near the relationships that she has with the other characters in this movie, and this movie is still as powerful, because this was her moment. This was her vehicle. This was her movie. And not for 1 second did she ever disappoint, down to at the end when she's literally playing the demon that's inside of her and she's just interacting with herself. And then we get this whole other version of her that is just bizarre evil incarnate. And she's, and like I said, that moment where she's the demon's choking her, she's like, I like living in your skin, I like playing in your skin, this is fun. That's still her. She gave a powerhouse performance in this that I was never unimpressed with. Every single time something happened with her, which was most of the movie, I was impressed. And so for the, like I said, for the couple of things I had wrong with this, nothing that she did comes anywhere close to that, because she was flawless in this movie.
And I think that can't be understated in a genre where the part 2 very often defines a series. And I realize that right now we're looking at part 2 as the end cap for Smile. I don't think that the producers are looking at Smile 2 as the end of the series. They're looking at this as, for Friday the 13th, part 2 defined it.
Right.
We got
Saw. Saw was defined by the second one.
Was defined by the second one. Halloween. I know that everyone thinks, I think of Halloween 1 as the defining moment in Halloween. But when we start thinking of blood and boobs, like we used to talk about for slashers, right? It's Halloween 2. That's the one. This is, in my opinion, the Halloween 2. This is the Friday the 13th part 2 in our time. And that might be a bold statement. That might be a hot take. But come back to this moment 5 years from now, and I think that you'll be saying, oh, well, of course. I think that it's that obvious that Naomi Scott did something for Smile.
Yeah. So when we, you know, looking towards other people, it is hard to find somebody that had, you know, any sort of impact that came anywhere close to what Naomi Scott had. But if I had to pick just one more person to talk about, I do want to just take a second to appreciate what Peter Jacobson gave us as Morris in this movie. I think that it was brilliantly done. I love the fact that he's who they cast in this, because everybody else had a very specifically tailored look to fit in this universe that was Sky Riley's world. I mean, even Gemma, who we kind of get the assumption is supposed to be, you know, her lifelong friend who has never really gotten sucked into this world. still fit the aesthetic of what you would expect people in this pop megastar's life to look like. And then you look at Peter Jacobson as Morris, and he's just some dude, right? Which, you know, he's balding, he's kind of unkempt, you know, he's just kind of along for the ride. I love that. And I always love an info dump character. I really always love an info dump character. The one who's just like, hey, they're giving me 4 minutes of screen time, and my job is to just make sure that everybody's caught up. Right? Like he's the previously on Smile guy. And he shows up, gives us the quick history, gives us what's going to happen, and then he's out. He's back for a minute, and then when he comes back, his whole, like, when he goes through the whole medical procedure, because he's an ER nurse, he tells her exactly what's going to happen, and everything's real specific, right? Your heart stops, brain stops getting oxygen. You got 2 minutes. If I can lower your body temperature, it might be 9. I want 9 minutes. And you know, he's giving her all this really specific stuff. And then when she says, let me see the needle, and he holds it up, and he just kind of gives this aw shucks shrug, like while holding the needle. It was so perfectly sold in that moment for a movie that was very, very light on comedic moments. This movie was meant to be scary and horrifying from beginning to end. He gives us this one brief moment to breathe and to catch our breath before what becomes a very intense finale. And I loved that. And he was the perfect guy for that. You know, because as soon as he shows up, I go, oh shit, it's Taub from House, right? And
that's 100% what everyone was thinking.
And I'm like, what's he got to say? And then he just perfectly sells this entire run he gets for his, you know, probably cumulative 7 minutes of screen time. He made the most of it. And I always appreciate that. You know, if you get cast in something and they're like, look, when it's all said and done, people that might not even remember you're in this movie, when you're an actor who goes, oh no, fuck that. People are going to remember that I was in this movie. Like, they're going to think about this movie. They're going to remember Naomi Scott was in it, and they're going to remember that I was in it. And that's what he did. He made the most of his time. He played his part perfectly. I really did love his character in this movie.
You are 1,000,000% right. Because I finished watching this movie today. I can only remember 2 characters.
Right?
Naomi Scott and Peter Jacobson. That's it. Like, there is like, Gemma's a character. She's an important character. I would not have remembered Gemma had you not said it. Does this have something to do with my epilepsy brain? Sure. I will concede to that. To my own point, I will concede to that. There's only 2 people that matter in this movie.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the final moments of this movie. And I never once thought this guy is the smile monster.
Right.
This guy is trying to get Gemma, or not Gemma, Sky to do the thing. He's not trying to get her to kill herself or any of that. I thought this is a regular dude who's trying his best to save someone and failing like he's done his whole life.
Yes.
Which is what Peter Jacobson does.
It's what he always does. He's always such a sad sack guy.
He is, and he's so fucking good at it. So, Mr. Jacobson, if you're listening to this, I am not harping on you. This is a praise. you are fantastic at your job. You are so damn good. And when he said, I got to go get something, I believed him.
Yeah.
When he was like, I got to go get something, I'm like, oh, you're going to fucking lock the door.
That's what I was waiting for him to just pull the cinder block and be like, I can't be in there or it'll move to me. You got to die.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it contrived? Sure. I will concede to this point. Was that a contrived moment in the story? Deus Ex Machina. 100%. Do I give a fuck? That's the operative question. I don't. Why do you? And I think that this is a personal question that you can ask yourself, and it is why I am better than you, listener, who is saying, well, actually, I care because this reason. It doesn't fucking matter. I'm telling you right now, as a nerd, it doesn't matter. He played his part. It was narratively what needed to happen. Whoever is the casting director is the greatest genius in all of this. Because I knew exactly what was going to happen when the movie started.
Right. Yeah.
And you should have too, and you did. Think about that. You knew what was going to happen before this movie started.
Yeah.
And that is the mark of a great franchise. It is the mark of something you're going to come back to for part 3. Hasn't happened yet, but in 2 years, maybe 3, you're going to come back to this episode. And I'm saying this episode, not to Smile 2. It's this one. Right now, this moment. You're going to come back to this and be like, yeah, that little fucking Cuban dude was right.
So we've got a Greg chiming in, just says it's been too long, man. We've missed you. We're glad you're still around. Greg, always listening, and we appreciate you so much, man. Well, I mean, there you have it, right? There's like Dave said, there's no other characters to talk about. We've hammered this story. We could go on and on about a few things, but we're just going to end up saying some of the same stuff over and over again. So it's that time of the show where we're going to rate this thing. Now, yeah, we've talked about a lot of other horror franchises and we've referenced Smile 1 a lot of times, but here at Shiver, we never rate a movie against other movies. We only rate it against itself. So in order to do that, we create a unique rating system for every movie that we do here at Shiver. So Dave, we're looking at Smile 2. Out of a possible 5 little jagged pills, what do you give Smile 2?
Listen, this is the most unscientific rating I've ever given. I'm going 4. I have sung this movie's praise, but also we don't rate a movie against itself or any other movie. It's not as good as the first one. I'm just going to come out there and say it. I can't even remember if this movie was directed by the same fucker who directed the first
one. Right. It is.
Was it?
In fact, yeah, they're both Parker Finn. He wrote and directed both of them.
Well, Parker Finn, you done better the first time. I love this movie. And this movie, I think, is more significant than the first because this one feels like a franchise.
Yeah. I'm actually right there with you. I'm gonna say 4 as well. Like I said, the couple of things that I had don't make the movie that much worse. I did kind of I wanted something a little different, but I can't fault the movie too much for not living up to an unfair expectation, right? I built a storyline into the movie that they didn't sell, and that's not their fault. They never did. It's not like I got baited into thinking it was going to go one way and it went another when it comes to the addiction angle. I knew this was about trauma. That's what Smile's about, right? That's what it's about. I knew that. I was looking for something that I didn't get. I'm not faulting it for that. I am faulting it for I am faulting it a little bit for the complete and total erasure of everything that I've just spent all this time watching as a hallucination. That does bother me a little bit. But would I recommend this movie? Absolutely. I think it's very scary. I think it's a lot of fun to watch. And do I look forward to Smile 3? Yeah. Yeah, I do. Because you're absolutely right. They did sell me here on the idea that this is something that can keep going. You know what? And just you referenced Final Destination earlier. You know, back when we watched the first Final Destination all those years ago, did you think, oh man, this is something that they could absolutely just keep doing, right? Somebody narrowly escapes death and death always wins. Can that keep happening? Well, it turns out it can. And that was a really abstract concept. The idea of just, can traumatized people keep having really fucked up situations happen to them for a long time? Yeah, that's not hard to imagine at all. So I think that they sold a franchise here. They did the damn thing. It's got a couple of problems, but yeah, I'm going to go 4 as well. This is 4 jagged little pills from me.
And I think that is perfect for this, because is this a perfect movie? No, there's problems. And I think that whether it be you or me, we've addressed issues. I've said, I don't give a fuck about the issues. And you've said, like, listen, they're there and we have to acknowledge them. There is oftentimes times where we have to say, you know what? Don't be such a fucking nerd. And just love a thing for what it is. And this is the start of a franchise. When's the last time we got a franchise that worked? In horror, it's been a long time. In the totality of cinema, maybe Avengers, like the first Avengers, that's the last time we got a franchise that worked. That's a long fucking time ago. We're talking about 2012.
Yeah.
It's 2025, motherfucker. It's been a long time. It's about time that we get something that works. Is it perfect? No. Do you need it to be perfect? No, you're not fucking perfect. I'm not perfect. Just enjoy a fucking thing.
There we go. So, a unanimous 4 jagged little pills from both of us here. Hey, go watch it. If you haven't seen it yet, if you've been listening to us trying to figure out, we're giving it 4. That means that's a recommendation. That's a stamp of approval. So, if you've enjoyed the episode, if you're not following us on social media, make sure you head to shiverpod.com where you can find links to all of those outlets. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All of those places at ShiverPod. Best place to reach us is on the Instagram if you want to say anything. Been having some fun on there with some memes and things lately. Make sure you reach out if there's something you think we should do. We have got a great one planned for next week that I have been excited about since it premiered at some festivals a little while ago. It's finally available for us for streaming. So make sure you follow us there. You'll find out what it is.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fight you very